Hello, everyone. This is Jesse, and you're listening to Set Lusting Bruce, the podcast where we celebrate the music, the memories, and the stories that Springsteen fans carry with them. Every episode, we sit down with fans from around the world to talk about the songs that shaped them, the shows that moved them, and the moments that keep us coming back to the East Street community. So settle in, turn up the volume, and let's talk a little Bruce, because every Springsteen fan has a story. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and I am so excited to talk to my guest tonight. David spent time just across the river from where I grew up. I grew up a lot of my time in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and David spent his summers in Beaumont, Texas, which was only 60 miles away. So I feel like we're neighbors. Welcome to the
Yeah,
podcast, David.
yeah, thank you. And I spent a good part of my summers in Lake Charles too, so I was probably there the same time you were.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think about one of my regrets and is that I graduated high school in 77. So you think about it, like Bruce was playing in Houston just 3 hours away when I was a sophomore or junior.
If only you
And
could have borrowed your mom's car.
yes, and I had no idea who he was, had no idea where to go. But it does bother me. I was that freaking close to see
Right.
him that early in his career.
Yeah, I think life is full of those missed opportunities. I guess I kind of think a lot of the lucky ones I had. So I grew up in Sacramento, California. Like I
Okay.
was saying before, my parents were public school teachers, and my dad was from Beaumont, and my mom was from Lake Charles, and our summers were spent back there in the South. But I grew up in a kind of working class neighborhood of Sacramento. And I think that was one of the ways that I connected with Springsteen was I think my favorite album is probably Darkness on the Edge of Town. And that came out in 1978 as I was 16 years old. I think the music that you listen to at that time is really important. It really sticks with you in a way that things that you and I hear now are probably not going to stick with us in quite the same sort of visceral way.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes I tend to be obsessive, David. So, like 1977, I just graduated high school. I went to a Montgomery Ward at Freon Lake Mall and picked up The Endless Summer by the Beach Boys on eight
Okay.
track
Okay.
and became obsessed with Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys.
Yeah, how could you not? That's a great record.
Yeah. And then went through other things. I've gone through other musics. And my latest is a few years ago, my one of my best friends kept talking about Jason Isbell and the 400
Oh,
Unicorns,
sure, yeah.
and he finally, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go see him. And I went, holy shit, what, why haven't you told me how good they are? And he's like, I've
Right.
been telling you for 3 years. So that's been my latest obsession is
Yeah.
Jason. Yeah,
So that album Southeastern is so good, isn't it?
it is. It is so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. So, all right, going from California to Southwest Louisiana or or Southeast Texas must have been a little bit like a time warp. So, what kind of music was your family listening to? And talk to me a little bit about that changing back and forth.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I kind of grew up, my dad was a like country western. I don't know that I ever saw him buy an album, but he somehow had this little stack of Johnny Cash albums that he would play at night as I was falling asleep. So that's a music that is deeply ingrained for me. And in fact, the next book that I'm going to do after this Bruce Springsteen book is the American recordings of Johnny Cash, his last recordings.
Ooh,
So looking forward to that. But yeah, my mom wasn't a big listener to music. I'm an older brother. My sister didn't listen much to music. So I found out about music by reading rock magazines like
yeah,
Cream and Rolling Stone especially. That's where I would hear a lot read about a lot of things. In high school, I kind of gravitated towards the other kids who liked rock and roll. And then there's a lot of swapping of records back then. And, you
yeah.
would make a cassette tape of your favorite record and give somebody else your record to tape. But going back and forth, that was really tough because I had my own stereo at home. I had my own room. I could listen to music, which I did all the time. And then I get to my grandparents' house. My grandparents' house in Beaumont especially was really tiny. It was a one bedroom, or I'm sorry, one bath, two bedroom. And my sister and I slept on the floor of the living room. And as I got older and I really wanted to listen to my music, I found it really frustrating. So what I would do is I had a little Montgomery Ward cassette player with a microphone that you would hold up against the speakers, and I would record all the albums that I wanted to listen to on cassette. And then I would put in a little earplugs when I got to Beaumont, and I would play Aerosmith or whatever my favorite record of the time was over and over again. So yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but that was, I guess I was committing to music in a way because I was forced to.
You know what I love that is I make the joke, David, that in my house we listen to both kinds of music, country and western. The Blues Brothers joke. Yeah, I have said this multiple times on the podcast that when I was 8 or 9, I had cousins in Ohio. That's where my dad's family was from. My mom's family was from Louisiana. My dad's family was from Ohio. And we were stationed in Kentucky. And when we would go visit my cousins in Ohio, they were shocked I could not name all four Beatles. They just could not imagine that it's
What kind of a
67,
life are you living?
68.
Yeah.
Yes, like how can you? But we listened to Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard. And now my mom did love Bobby Darin and Fats Domino,
Okay.
some early rock and roll. So it's funny. I'm looking forward to the book. I can tell you right now, put me on the list for to have you on again to talk about the Johnny Cash recordings because a couple of years ago I do a Doctor Who podcast, which is about a science fiction show where the main character travels in space and
Right.
time. And me and my buddy talked about what 5 musical shows would you go to if you could
Ah,
have that. And I said the Johnny Cash show where Rick Rubin was there and went behind afterwards and pitched him, letting him record him. I
right.
would have loved to been there. I
Yeah.
think that would have been amazing.
That was at Johnny Depp's Viper Room, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, gosh, man, I could get us off. I know we're here to talk about Bruce and you're talking
Talk
about your
about,
Bruce
yeah.
book, but I could have a whole episode about the the voice that he had, the miles in his voice as he did those recordings
Right.
were just amazing.
And especially when you get to the end of those posthumously released records where
Yeah,
he's singing through his pneumonia,
yeah,
and it's just sometimes a little whispery read of what it was once, but there's still that passion in there that can transform even the kind of dumb song can
yeah,
suddenly take on a lot of weight, I think.
yeah. And I joke about this a lot, David, that I find if I generalize my guests, they fall into two categories, which is an oversimplification, but the people that loved their parents' music and then as they got older, just added to it. They just, oh, I found Aerosmith or I found
Right.
or the people who couldn't stand their parents' music. And then when they turn 30, they go,
It's
that
not so
Johnny
bad after
Cash
all.
guy my
Yeah.
dad liked, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're traveling back and forth. Can you remember when you first discovered Bruce and what about him spoke to you?
I bought that the first album, Asbury Park. It was after it came out, which was in 1973. I was just a tyke then, but I was that was maybe one of the first 10 albums I think I bought. And so it was a that was a weird experience. The just the verbiage that's going on in there. I wasn't sure if I liked Springsteen at that time. I liked Spirits in the Night, and I could get into that a little bit. But when Born to Run came out, think I probably got that about the time it came out. I was a pretty early record buyer. I started buying records when I was 10.
Yeah.
And I can remember thinking that was the most magnificent work of art that was ever created, especially
Hmm.
Jungle Land.
Yeah. So I always like to preface this, David, the amount of times you've seen Bruce perform live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan he is.
Oh, I'm glad to
So,
hear that.
so are you someone, have you seen him live? And if
I,
so, are you someone who counts?
No, I have seen him, I think, 5 times over the course of I'm in my 60s. So that hasn't been my main relationship to him. One of my good friends has seen him. I think we went to see him in LA for this tour. I think that was her 48th time.
Okay.
I feel like she could tell you a lot more, obviously, about every show and set list and stuff like that, but I think I can put up my knowledge of the songs themselves against her. And so this book that I wrote, it's called On Track, Bruce Springsteen, 1973 to 1987, is about the recorded music. So if I were concerts, I think I'm not really qualified to do that. But as someone who's listened to these albums, in some cases hundreds of times, I felt like I can talk about them okay. So yeah, I love seeing Springsteen live. I think when we went to go see him in the LA or at the LA Forum, I think we paid $500 each for our tickets.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. I know that a lot of Springsteen fans had a falling out with him a little bit when ticket prices started to go up so precipitously. But anyway, I'm wandering off track.
No, this is, I actually, a couple questions about that. What did you think of the tour? Because it's very political this
Yeah.
time.
I thought it was fantastic. I think it needs to be political. These are times when people should be speaking out. I think probably my favorite band of all time is The Clash. And so when he started playing Working for the Clampdown, I was going nuts. And I think that's a fabulous song off of
Yeah.
London Calling. And Springsteen's version is just really excellent.
Yeah, I was a little sad. I went to Austin to see the show, and he did not do that song that night.
Yeah.
But I was supposed to be going to Atlanta the next weekend, and then for various reasons, I didn't get to go. But the song really fit the set list, and I was glad he included it. As we're recording this, it's the second week of August, and why am I drawing a blank? Never mind, Jesse having a brain fart. I'll think of this in a minute. So, yeah, what were some highlights of the album? Then I want to talk about the book. Talk about the tour and that song. Anything besides Clash that stood out to you?
I think Tom Morella's guitar work, kind
Yeah,
of when he gets up there and starts wailing for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes,
yeah,
that kind of just to me in a good way kind of overwhelms the rest of the show. So
yes.
nobody plays guitar on that stage the same way that he does. But I thought that was really fine. I don't know. I think it was a pretty good set list. It may be a little conventional, but again, I wouldn't speak as someone who's been to 48 shows and could say I'm back and that was my favorite set list.
Yeah, one of the things that I was frustrated with, David, is that a couple of people said it was a mediocre set list. And I said, I just going to disagree. I said, one, he's telling a story he wants to tell. And two, if you look at the set list, it is a diverse set list through all kinds of his eras
Absolutely.
from albums, right? It isn't just heavy on Born to Run, Darkness era. There are songs from the Magic and Wrecking Ball and area. The My brain fart has now gone away. As we're recording this, Garth Brooks has announced he's touring, and every ticket is going to be the same price, no matter
Wow.
where it is.
Wow.
And a lot of people I'm seeing on social media, because social media is a curse, Bruce, you should pay attention. And all I wanted to argue is let's see what happens with the scalpers in the secondary market.
Yeah.
Is there really going to be seats for $150 that are in the pit or in the front?
Yeah.
Or no, it's going
Or
to be,
probably not. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Have you always wanted to be a writer? Is writing always been what your passion, David?
Yeah, I think so. I've been a bar band musician as well too, and I've been playing in bands since I was before I could drive.
Okay.
So those are my twin passions, writing and playing music. And in a book like this, they really match up nicely.
Yeah.
I was Santa Barbara's poet laureate a few years back, and I've published quite a few books of poetry. That I love to write. When I sit down, I that's probably the thing that I turn to. Or if our band has a gig coming up, then I probably, trying to remember the songs as I'm in my 60s, I said, is a little bit harder to remember 2 hours worth of music.
Poetry is something that just has not is something I have not spent a lot of time to. Obviously, I love song lyrics. So
Right.
compare the two if you could. How do you feel about that?
I look for poetry in lyrics, and I think Springsteen is probably, especially in the period that I'm writing about, is probably one of the more poetic lyricists. I think he goes through an interesting phase there where Born to Run has these songs with these like Jungle Land, Thunder Road. I know we're going to talk about that at the very end of the
Yeah.
show, where it's this really expansive stuff. And then by the time you get to Born in the USA, is very compact. And I don't know. I think for me, the sweet spot is Darkness on the Edge of Town. I feel like that's where he's still the most lyrical, the most poetic, without going off into the stratosphere the way he does on the first two albums. But back to your question, I think poetry versus song lyrics, poetry is something that can stand on its own without any music to bolster it. So you can look at it on the page and it comes alive off the page. I think a lot of song lyrics don't do that, and I think that's perfectly okay. I love Louis, but
Yeah.
we call it a poem. There's something, again, to use that word visceral about great rock that just helps whatever the lyrical limitations are transcend them, I think.
Yeah, God Only Knows is, I think, one of the most beautiful songs in the
Right.
world. If you just break down the lyrics, there's not a lot of meat there.
Yeah, it's going to say dumb because I also love that song.
Yeah,
But yeah, and so I don't think it's fair to compare this. They truly are apples and oranges.
yeah,
I think the best song lyrics are those that are the most concrete and imagistic. And
yeah,
I think that's where Bruce is a master, especially on these, I think on some of these albums that I'm talking about, where you can see what's going on, you can feel what's going on. The title track of Darkness on the Edge of Town, you can feel that the humidity as he's going up on the hill for the last time. That's poetic. And that makes a really strong lyric, whether it's accompanied by music or not, I think.
so why, obviously, you've talked about your Bruce fandom and very young, you were enjoying him, but you've written a wide variety of books, including now I want to read Living Blue in Red State since am a very
Yes, you are living blue and red.
I am a lonely blueberry in a very red strawberry state here in Texas. So why did you decide to write about Bruce?
I did one previous book with this series. So the series is called On Track, and the shtick is every album, every song. And the
Okay.
previous book I did was of Talking Heads.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed doing that. There's a lot of the artists are already taken, but miraculously, Springsteen wasn't. So when I saw that, I just jumped at the chance. I said, "Can I please do this book?" I didn't think the books have a 65,000 word limit cap. I knew there was no way I could get his whole catalog in, so I just thought I'm going to do the music that I know the best, the early
Yeah.
albums. And it was just a great chance to re-listen to everything closely, to read about everything, to pick through the instrumentation on every song. That's really interesting. Did you really notice that glockenspiel before you started writing about it? Maybe not. And so that it was just exciting. It was great. I think I took about 6 months to do it, but it was a really invigorating 6 months.
And is that you decided early in my podcast? I don't do this much anymore, but I used to ask the question of my guest, if you had to choose picking everything before Born to Run and back, or everything from, or Tunnel of Love backwards or Tunnel of Love forwards, which set list would you pick? And I would pick Tunnel of Love forward
Ah,
because that's where I got
That's where you came on board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was a casual fan, and then the Rising and seeing him in 2002 the first time is when I became obsessed, right? So obviously you would pick the early.
I would. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. I was a young parent. My oldest daughter was born in 1985. So there was a point then where you don't really have the luxury to sit around and listen to records anymore when you're kind of
Yes.
working. And actually, one of the strongest memories I have of a Springsteen album is just before my daughter was born. I was looking around for work and trying to get everything I could. And I was delivering out of town newspapers in Sacramento from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Worst job ever. If you
Yeah.
ever tries to get you to take it, don't do it. But I would play Born in the USA over and over. I just did the job for 4 months, but I think I listened to it almost every night. And it was just something about this kind of desperation that was in there. I was in my hometown. That's the final song.
Sure.
And I was driving around my hometown, sometimes being followed by the cops, sometimes being followed by people who thought I was going to break into their homes until I threw my newspaper out the window of my old Datsun pickup truck. So that's a strong memory for me. But then again, I start to get off the trolley a little bit just because I don't have the time to do it. So I had to come back to the later albums that you've been mentioned as an adult.
Yeah. And like one of the, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to reading the book, is breaking down the things. There's another podcast called the Strong Songs Podcast, and it's a musician, and he basically just breaks down songs, right? And he did Born to Run, and he went through all the different, not just the lyrics, but the music and what they're building on the instruments. And I made the joke, I thought I loved Born to Run till I heard this podcast, and then I realized how much more I loved it. Like
Okay.
all the things that's happening that I got emotionally, but I didn't understand intellectually.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what did you learn, some of the things you did as researching this book.
I bought or checked out of the library just about any book that I could find about Springsteen.
Yeah,
When I had my old albums there, I would open them up and look at the track lists. I listened over and over really carefully, often with my eyes closed for 2 or 3 times, just to what am I missing? What have I heard so many times I've forgotten what it's there? There's sometimes though, I really like Tunnel of Love. I know not everybody does, but
if I had to push, that would be my favorite album.
yeah, okay, there you go. And When You're Alone, I love that song.
Yeah,
A lot of people made fun of it. When you're alone, when you're alone. But that just felt like a real strong statement to me, though. That looping quality is, I think, poetic. And whenever you can match the instrumentation with the lyrics, I think it works really well. And again, I would go back to Darkness on the Edge of Town, where I feel like, especially the piano work is just spectacular. And you don't realize what that's my answer to your question. I didn't realize how important the piano was as an instrument to this group of albums until I re-listened to them.
yeah. When you think about, there's the piano, there he has keyboards. That is when I know he's talked about writing a lot of some of this on a piano. That's interesting. Yeah, we're talking on track. Bruce Springsteen, 1973 through 1987, every album, every song from David Starkey. Was dropping at 87 mostly for space, or do you feel like that kind of is the end of one era?
I absolutely think that's the end of an era. For me, the next album isn't for another 5 years, that the Human Touch Lucky Town
Yeah,
double release. And the band sort of breaks up, and the band sort of breaks up really before Tunnel of Love. There's only,
yeah,
here and there appearances by folks. So yeah, that just felt like a good time. It was also it matched my own kind of biographical moment where I checked out a little bit. I did
sure.
buy Human Touch and Lucky Town when they came out, probably as cassettes.
Yeah,
But I didn't have this because I was a young parent. I didn't have the same sort of attachment that I did as a young man who was still struggling to figure out who he was.
Yeah. I do think there is, I remember some impressionist, and I can't remember who, I wish he did the 4 or 5 version of Frank Sinatra's career. And he sang each song a different, right? You could,
Huh?
this was Frank's voice during that time. And I certainly think we can make the same argument for your next book, Johnny Cash, era of Johnny Cash's voices. But I do think there is been a really, it makes for an interesting discussion, the eras of Springsteen, the Broadway era.
Huh?
And now then this letter to you and the this I don't give an F era. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that album letter to you. I think that's great. Here's one thing that I think I probably diverge from a lot of folks who are great fans of his concerts is I'm not super crazy about all the talking.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it's really moving, and I thought during this last tour it was really moving. But there are also times when I feel like, okay, get back to playing your guitar.
Yeah.
And one of the albums that I have actually on my list is the live 1975
Yeah.
to 1985. There, a lot of the talking is pared away on that, and
Yeah.
I think because when you're just listening to someone on a record, his presence is so strong that when he's speaking, but when you take that away, I think something is important is lost.
Yeah, when I started seeing him, like I said, 2002 is my first show, he had started talking less. And at the River tour, when he did the redone River tour, he had certain songs where he would talk. And I think in this tour, it was the right amount of kind of his little mini sermons, or at least inspirational
Yeah.
theories. But my son went to the River tour, and that was his first show, this second River tour. And he was like 22, 23. And Chris is like, boy, you got to know what you're doing because Bruce does not waste time between songs. He's
Yeah.
like, it's just one song after another.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I saw that tour as well too, and I remember thinking, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. There, yeah. Somebody said, no time for small talk tour. Yeah.
There are a lot of
Uh,
songs to get through.
yeah, I got a lot of songs to go through. Yeah. So it surprised you about the amount of piano on there. What is how about share and I certainly don't want to spoil the book, but do you have a couple of details or stories from the book that you want to share? Because we certainly want people to go out and get it.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, I felt when I was writing my Talking Heads book that I relied maybe over much on stories from other people. And so for this book, I still, if there's a good anecdote, I want to keep it in there,
Yeah.
especially for someone who doesn't know the music. But I tried to this time write more about what it felt like to me. And sometimes that's being a little critical.
Yeah.
So I think if I'm going back to the first album, I don't know, The Angel, I don't think that's a very good song. And I wondered, are Springsteen fanatics going to jump on me
Yeah.
for offering my opinion on why I think this is a weak piece of writing? I guess the stories that I have in there are going to weigh my own interpretations and places where like for instance, to go to the second album, I think New York City Serenade, that opening part with the piano with David Sanchez, is just pretty spectacular as a piece of
Right.
music. I feel like it's unfair for Springsteen to take credit for the entire writing of that song. That piano stuff is at the beginning is things that he could not play. And so that's a story that I offer up. My opinion that this seems a little bit selfish. And I know that's what he's done throughout his career. And David Byrne was the same way with Talking Heads. This is basically my song, therefore I want to get the credit for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. In that particular instance, I feel like there's maybe a co-composer.
David, you're safe because I've been on the record and hopefully you won't hang up on me. Um, Jungle Land is not one of my favorite songs. I just sorry.
This
Now you got a
this
spit
interview is
take.
over, Jesse.
There, he just did a spit take, ladies and gentlemen. I recognize intellectually brilliant, but it doesn't speak
It
to
doesn't
me
move you.
emotionally. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't move me.
Now,
And
when
people are
you
like,
get
you are out of your effing mind. And I go, I know I'm wrong. But
to that the final verse about the poets down here don't
yeah,
read nothing at all, I guess as a writer myself, that really
yeah,
spoke to me. Growing up, I didn't grow up in Freehold, New Jersey, but I
yeah,
grew up in North Highlands, this neighborhood in Sacramento, which is not unlike that, and probably
right.
some ways is probably more run down and crime infested. And I don't know, there's something about just the idea of observing what as being a kind
Yeah,
of poetry that still strikes me as being really moving. When it's funny we were talking about this because when I was writing on that song and I quoted that the passage of that lyric, I was kind of crying a little bit. I was like, oh,
yeah,
this still gets to me. Who could resist this?
yeah. And but it's also, I think that's the beauty. Once again, a few years after Broadway, when it was on Netflix for Father's Day, my wife and son watched it with me. I get my birthday and Father's Day, I get to pick what Bruce thing they're going to watch that I beat them down with, right?
Right.
And he was growing up just spoke to him. He just was like, "Oh my goodness." He just
Uh,
was adored that song.
yeah,
And the other one I thought was really funny is we went and saw Deliver Me from Nowhere,
sure.
and they both were asking, what is Nebraska? What's going on? And I played Highway Patrolman for them, and my son became obsessed with that song.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, okay, what happened? Like when the
Yeah,
captain called the guy in, did he go, where's your brother? Did he
right,
lie and say my
right.
car broke
He
down?
wanted to
Like
know
what?
the end of the song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was like, what do you like
right.
at the next Christmas? Do you see the guy? He was fascinated by that song. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. What did you think of the movie overall?
So I obviously you go in there, I've got my fan hat on. I'm wearing a Supergirl t-shirt on. I went in with seeing Supergirl hoping for the best, and I ended up liking the movie a lot. And I know there's a lot of haters out there. So I go in watching the movie, and I'm at the end of it, I really like it, but I start asking myself, who is this movie for? Because does it go deep enough for the hardcore Springsteen fan, but is it general enough for the casual rock and roll biography fan?
And
So,
you're thinking it's maybe neither one or the other,
yeah,
huh?
it's neither
Yeah.
fish nor fowl. What did you think?
Yeah, that it's funny. I went in like you, like anybody who probably was watching this podcast.
Yeah,
I already knew a lot about the album. I just
yeah,
finished writing about it and reading the book, and so I knew everything that was going to happen in a factual term. The girl who's the sort of amalgam of
yeah,
his lovers was interesting. I left thinking about the same way you did. I thought, oh, this is interesting. I felt obliged to see it. I
yeah,
enjoyed watching it because I could connect with so much of the stuff. And how are they portraying the house, for instance? Is
yeah,
it historically correct? Which I think it probably was. But my wife, who isn't as big a fan and had been getting a little sick of me listening to Springsteen every day, all the time for 6 months, she loved it. She
yeah.
thought it was magnificent, really powerful. And I think I kind of dragged her along, but
Yeah.
she was a big fan of it. So who knows?
I wonder if you may recognize this conversation where I will say, my wife's name is Linda. Hey, Linda, do you want to hear a story? Is it about Bruce Springsteen? Never mind.
Yeah. Have you seen that New Yorker cartoon? I gotta send it to you after we're
Yeah.
off if you haven't seen it, but it's these two girls are talking and one says to the other, for Father's Day, I'm gonna let my dad explain a Springsteen song to
Yes.
me. Yeah.
I love that every Father's Day I see that and I smile.
Yeah.
Yes, it is just so great. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's interesting and I love the book that it was based on. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've read the book.
I did read the book, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was really good. And so when what do you feel after you've done this book, do you see a creative journey that Bruce was on during this eras?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. I feel like he's starting off before he ever records the first album, and sometimes he's playing these long guitar solos, right? And sometimes he's a folky, and he's playing 50s and 60s covers. You feel like, okay, he's a guy who's absorbing the history of rock and roll and trying to picture himself. I feel like the first album, he doesn't really get it. The second album, he goes into for me the wrong direction, which is these big long songs, but you probably wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah.
And then he just nails it with Born to Run. And then after that, it's how is he gonna do a variation on this masterpiece? And so again, to my mind, he excels it on Darkness on the Edge of Town. And then I think everything else, and I guess I've listened to every album he's ever made. It doesn't quite work all the way.
Okay.
So I would say the some of the rock songs on the river are a little dumb to me. You can look, but you better not touch. That's fun, but
Yeah.
that's silly. Nebraska is a world unto itself, and you are either in the mood to listen to it or you're not. I don't always want to listen to a song that only has two chords in it for 4 or 5 minutes. Born in the USA, I think, is great, maybe a little too commercial at times. Tunnel of Love it can be hit and miss. Again, I really like it. We could go on,
Yeah.
and I feel like there is this journey where he's getting to explore different sides of himself, different aspects of that early work that influenced him, but it doesn't ever quite meld again, except for, to my mind, Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town, where I feel like every second on both of those records is just fabulous.
Yeah. And I think obviously I'm biased towards some of the newer stuff. I used to argue that Tunnel of Love, you neither to have your heart broken multiple times or have been in a long-term relationship to get that album because it's so much about his relationships at the time. But I think one of the cool things is he never tried to do Born to Run Part 2 or Darkness Part 2. He
Yeah.
just kept making new music and just whatever, and some of it worked and some of it doesn't. But he never tried to really repeat himself.
Yeah, and that is so admirable. Like as with Dylan, it's this new artist who doesn't just end at a certain point in their career, 35 years old or
Yeah,
whatever, take some time off and then just retread their hits for the rest of their life. It's somebody who's really trying to do it into their 70s or 80s in Dylan's case, 90s in the case of Willie Nelson.
yeah.
That's really admirable. And so, as a fellow writer, I'm all for that. Whether, and who wants to just repeat something over and over again? It's boring.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's when there certainly are, I make fun a little bit of, I had for April Fool's Day one time, I did the classic Springsteen fan that everything after darkness is shit, a guy on the podcast. And that just the whole thing, just everything. And I do know there are plenty of fans
That
that
would actually really believe that. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think you, as you mentioned, five of his albums are in Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, for instance, put Western Stars in that group. I don't know how you feel about that record, but so what? I mean,
Yeah.
it's great that he's continuing to
Yeah.
expand and do whatever he can.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that because I grew up listening to Glenn Campbell and everything, that this was something that
You
spoke
like
to me.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it. But yeah, it is like, where did this come from? And the beautiful film that watched it,
Yeah, I
that,
watched that.
yeah. And my wife reached over to me and said, you would do anything to be in that barn, aren't you? Wouldn't you? I go, yes, of course I would. I would love to be in that
Yeah.
barn.
Yeah. I'm somebody who has been doing that myself for 2 decades. I know what it takes. You're really comfortable, good questions. And so kudos.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We could talk about your podcast. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yours before, if you don't need to go.
Yeah, no, I kind of stumbled into, we have it's not public TV, it's educational TV. Santa Barbara has this
Okay.
special arrangement. I stumbled in 2004 for some other reason, started talking to the manager, and he said they were looking to start an arts interview thing. I had never interviewed anybody in my life. I'd certainly never been on television. And I said, I'll do it. You probably would have said the same thing.
Yeah, I would have too. Yes, exactly.
And then I just, if you, so it's called The Creative Community. And if you put my name in the creative community into YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever, you can see the hundreds of shows that I've done over the last 20 plus years.
Any highlights that stand out?
I interviewed Sue Grafton. Do you know her work?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, A is for, her
Yeah.
Alphabet Murder series. I interviewed her before she passed away. I recently interviewed Pico Iyer. I don't know if you know his work. He's
No.
a kind of famous travel writer.
Okay.
T.C. Boyle is a famous
Nice.
novelist who lives here in town. Just whatever. One time I had a lady who was like a local harpist, and she
Yeah.
brought both her Irish harp and the giant harp
Oh, how fun.
thing. So I get a kick out of stuff like that. That's it. That's
Yeah.
fun for
That
me.
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, David, you've already talked to my next question is usually going to be what's next, but you've already shared that. Your next book, after we're finished promoting this one, Bruce Springsteen, 73 to 87, every album, every song. You want to work on your Johnny Cash book. What haven't you done as a writer that you want to do?
I when I get an idea, I will jump on it. So before I get to this Johnny Cash book, I also have a contract with a university press, Purdue University Press, to write about my parents' time in assisted living. And I'm breaking it down into sections. So I have little chapters. I have one on bingo, which is
Mhm.
something that happens a lot in assisted living. I have something about urinary tract infection. Everything is alphabetized, so it's all fragmented in the way that my memory of their experience there, and I think their life in assisted living was too. That's really different from writing about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, it
But
sounds like it.
it was when your parents are get old and then they die, that's a big thing in your life. And for my life, assisted living was a big part of their transition out of life into death. So I'm memorializing them. It's kind of a memoir. It's also some research about what assisted living is all about. That's the sort of thing that suddenly I'll just say, "Hey, Jesse, I'm going to write this book about assisted living." And you say,
Yeah,
"What the hell, David? You don't have, that's got
yeah.
nothing to do with what you just did." But if it sticks with me for a few months and I think I can do it, I'll do it.
Okay.
So I don't know yet. What do I still want to do? It's just going to be something like that just pops into my head and I'll just jump on it.
All right, so in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you for final thoughts and where people can go to find more about you, contact you. We'll plug the book again. Before I get you out of here, though, I got to ask you the Mary question.
Yeah.
So, what that is, if you are a fan of David's work and you're checking out this podcast for the first time, thank you. He's made you all proud. Jay Armstrong is a retired honors English teacher. And when he was teaching there in Philadelphia, he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they
Right.
would read it as if it was a poem, and they would discuss the imagery, the themes, compare it to Robert Frost, Road Not Taken,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
other American poets. And then he would ask his class at the end, do you think Mary gets in the car? So, David, that was your homework. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I guess I don't know how you could think that she doesn't get in the car. And I think a lot of that has to do with the delivery of the song lyrics off the page and back onto the record. But yeah, heck yeah. What else is
Very
she gonna
nice.
do?
Exactly. Very nice. Very good. All right. So, David, what's the best way to reach you and talk again how they can find the book?
Yeah, so davidstarkey.net is my website. There is another David Starkey, a kind of crazy British historian who's got davidstarkey.com. That's not me. I didn't say any of the crazy things that he said. So davidstarkey.net. And probably the fastest way to find this is to go onto the Simon and Schuster website and look under Bruce Springsteen and David Starkey, and it'll will pop right up. There are obviously all sorts of online booksellers, some of them with more integrity than others. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's plenty of ways to get it. One thing I will say, you and I are talking actually here in early July of
Yeah.
2026. The book is out in Britain and Australia because there's a British publisher originally. It's not out in the US until August the 22nd. I have noticed looking on some of the websites that there are used copies that have been out for a month that are available, but probably the best thing to do is just to pre-order the book wherever you happen to buy your books.
Very nice. I will make sure this is out before August 25th so that people will have plenty of time to get it. I will, the evil empire, Amazon let me buy the Kindle version now.
Okay.
So I
You can do that.
yes, so I'm looking forward to reading it. And I cannot wait to have you back in to talk Johnny Cash. And anytime you have a book to promote or you just feel like talking, David, reach out to me. I'd love to have you join me again.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure, Jesse. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. On track. Bruce Springsteen, 1973, 1987. Every album, every song on track. It will be available where every book's available on August 25th. Check it out. As I said, right now, I just saw you can pick it up on Kindle if you're so inclined. David, have a very safe summer. Enjoy. Please come back. Listeners, go check out the book. Let them know what you think. For now, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk soon. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Set Listing Bruce. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll check out other episodes of the podcast. Before we wrap up, I've got a few quick housekeeping notes on how you connect with me and follow my other projects. I'm still on Twitter, aka X, at Jesse Jackson DFW. The show is also there at Set Listing Bruce. We've got a Facebook page both for me and the podcast, so please stop by and give us a like. I'm part of a few other podcast adventures as well. On Perfectly Good Podcast, my co-host Sylvan and I are talking about every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. Both Set Lustig Bruce and Perfectly Good Podcast are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, home to hundreds of music faux shows. So explore, there's something there for every fan. My good friend Charles and I continue to do deep dives into all things Doctor Who on Next Stop Everywhere. And Lou, Karen, and I are chatting about pop culture and The Expanse on JKL Media. I'd love to hear from you. Email me at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. You can also leave a voicemail, 469-249-2442. If you've enjoyed any part of this podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating or review. If you listen on Spotify, you can leave a comment after each episode. I will read them and share them on the show if you'll let me. They truly do help other people find us. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't. Suggest someone you think would be a great guest. Getting to talk to people about their experiences, whether it's music or other creative passions, is one of my greatest joys. I hope these conversations bring you a little joy, a little peace, and a whole lot of love. Keep hope alive.